right, so welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about the story of how I lost 50 pounds in 3 months and why, as a professional, I don't recommend what I did to anybody, including myself, if I could go back. So let's just get into the story of what brought things to my attention that I needed to change my lifestyle and my weight, and then we can look at why I don't particularly recommend the methods that I went about doing things. So I'm just coming down the stairs one day. I'm shirtless, minding my business. My mom is on a video call with her sister. Her sister goes, "Who is that monster?" Verbatim. And I just thought to myself in the moment, that's whatever. I kept it moving. But by the end of the day, I was thinking about it and it was eating me because my feelings weren't hurt. It was more that what she said was accurate. I had let myself go. I lost 50 pounds after that. I went from 280 pounds to 230 pounds. A bit after that, we went on vacation and it was out to the cottage in Quebec, the whole thing. I went kayaking and my mom was taking some photos on my phone. Then later that night when we were out at the fire, I was looking through those photos, just kind of flipping through them. I'm not gonna lie, man, I was disgusted. And it wasn't in this big dramatic fashion or anything like this. It was more just kind of like a quiet, humbling feeling because I looked terrible in those photos. I looked like everything I would tell myself that I wasn't. I was gassed, kayaking on a lake. Flat water, no ocean, not whitewater rafting. It was a lake. But I was looking like I just finished a triathlon. It was embarrassing. The thing I want to be honest about, because it matters for pretty much everything that comes after this, is that I had watched myself climb 260, 270, 280, and I would look in the mirror every single day and it just wasn't enough. And it took somebody else's eyes, my aunt's voice really, to make that real. If you've been there, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. And for a long time, I was running this kind of here for a good time, not a long time kind of philosophy, which admittedly, it started out as a joke, but then I actually started to embody this type of ideology and it just spiraled from there. And when you feed your body like you don't plan on keeping it, eventually it starts to look that way, like you don't plan on keeping it. So anyway, we're at the cottage. Burgers whenever I want, hot dogs whenever I want. I was doing whatever, eating whatever I felt like. And I made a decision at that point that honestly I would still defend. I wasn't gonna go and ruin my vacation because of this realization that I had that I just let myself go and that I needed to make a change. Instead, I turned the vacation into a sort of send-off, which I know is the cliche that people engage in. But my idea was just that. It was simple to just run out the rest of the week, enjoy it properly, and then when I get home, lock in. What I did start doing out there was reading, educating myself. So when I wake up in the morning or before I go to bed, I would be researching how best to tackle weight loss. And this was before I ever realized that you could just ask an AI to do it. So I was just there Googling and reading articles like I was back in school. I think the reading is sort of where the trouble starts, which I will eventually get to. So we get home from vacation and I'm going through that fridge like a man possessed. I've got garbage bags and anything processed or packaged is gone. Pantry, same story. I attacked everything with this obsessive drive because that's just the kind of personality that I have. And later on in the video, you'll hear about how that obsession drove a couple of decisions that I made that I do not think were in my best interest. So yeah, every label was scrutinized, whole foods only, animal based, fruit, and at that point, basically no vegetables. And then there were the supplements. I went to a popular animal organ supplement company and I just went insane. I'm talking thousands of dollars spent on liver capsules, bone marrow, bone matrix, the protein, the men's stack with the blue label. On top of that, I was taking the classic omega-3s, which if you know anything about what's already in those like animal-based stacks, it was just redundancy on redundancy. I did learn some useful things in that little era in my life, and I have no problem giving them to you guys for free. Probably one of, if not the most important thing that I learned is that you do not need organ supplements. The most important organ, I would say, is liver because it is by far the most nutrient-dense food out there, and you only need about 100 grams a week to be able to supplement things like folate. So you can take off like a 5 MTHF supplement from your stack if you're eating liver, because you're getting all that and then some from a tiny piece of liver. 100 grams isn't really a lot. And if you struggle with either the taste or the texture of liver, it's as simple as cutting it up, freezing it, and then taking those little cuts that are frozen and just popping them like pills. Very easy. You weigh them up on a little food scale, you freeze them, you take them out once a day, pop one of those in your mouth, swallow it whole. You wouldn't even know that you were eating liver. Now, there were a lot of other things that I learned that I certainly don't recommend, so I'll get into those. So in all that reading, I stumbled upon Dr. Paul Saladino. Now, if you know about him, then you know, but I want to give an honest version of his impact on me. So I found him to be a very useful entry point because he got me thinking about whole foods, reading labels. Despite this, he's also where I picked up some of the beliefs that I had at the time that the evidence didn't necessarily wholeheartedly support. Things like the seed oil stuff, cooking everything in tallow and butter. I was down the whole pipeline, fully invested in the industrial lubricant conspiracies and all of that. Because when you are not critically appraising research, when you're just locked onto a goal, everything that confirms that mission, it gets let in. But here's where I've landed since, and it's sort of the crux of this channel and why I'm making videos like this. Olive oil, for instance, is the most studied cooking fat that we have. The evidence on it is good. And even then, I still cook with tallow. I like it. I feel like the food tastes better with it, but that's just my preference. The science isn't wholeheartedly there, but I will always tell you which version I'm handing you, because the people who don't make that distinction are exactly how I ended up spending thousands of dollars on freeze-dried organs. And I don't want that for you. So what exactly did those 3 months look like for me? They looked like 12-hour shifts on an acute cardiology unit. And if you have never done that job or worked in a place like that, I cannot overstate how much walking, lifting, and running that already is. Then I'd come home and I would sprint on a treadmill for 30 minutes every day. No rest days, like none. On top of that, I was on a heavily restricted diet. Whole foods, yeah, but a hard caloric deficit. And I was strict to a degree that I can only call, in retrospect, punitive, because that's what it was. I punished myself for any kind of failure that I had on my weight loss journey. Any slip, any bad number on the scale, and I would take it out on my own body the very next day. I was not using tricks like exploiting caffeine. I've never been a coffee drinker or an energy drink kind of guy. In fact, I think I've only had one 5-hour energy in my life, and that was way back in high school. And about an hour after taking it, I thought I was gonna die. So never that, never again. No steroids, no GLP-1s, no semaglutide, no retatrutide, nothing pharmaceutical. People will hear that and think, okay, so he's natty, it was healthy, it had to be. But that's not true. I was paying for success with my well-being, and it worked. The scale was dropping pretty much every day. I was just lost in the feeling, and the feeling is the trap because it was euphoric. I would stand on that scale and feel like a god because every time it would be 1 more pound gone or another half pound gone, and who wouldn't want that? But by mid-shift, I was passed out on my breaks, sleeping so deep you could probably rob me where I was sitting. And that's not an exaggeration for the camera. That was like every work day. That's basically how it went. And it went on like this for the 3 months. My margins, they got thinner. I started telling myself at one point that I wanted to see what it was that I was capable of. I think what I was actually finding out was just how much damage I could absorb before something had to give. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I am a big proponent for mental fortitude. I still am. And I think that the ability to tolerate discomfort and to be able to keep a commitment to yourself when things get rough, it's real, it's trainable, and building that skill is probably the single greatest investment that you can make in yourself. But what those 3 months taught me is that mental fortitude is more of a force multiplier than it is a compass. Because I pointed my mental fortitude at this very punishing plan. And all that discipline really did was allow me to execute a bad method harder, longer than most people would before their body gave out and forced the issue. That sounds like maybe it's a flex or something, but it just means that I'm taking more damage before something gives. And is that really the best thing? Not really. I had luck and circumstances on my side as well, because I had no lasting negative outcomes out of this, thankfully. But that is certainly not the norm for people who take this kind of a path. And you'll hear me advocate a lot for building mental strength on this channel. But I also want to remind you, and I think it's probably the more important thing to take away from this video, is that discipline with a healthy purpose is far more important than just being disciplined. So here's the part that I couldn't see at the time, and I want to do something just a little bit different to be able to show that to you. So I want you to take everything that I just described, take my name off of it, just envision a person who punishes themselves for failure with food and exercise, trains through exhaustion every single day with no rest, restricts harder whenever the scale disappoints them, describes their own body with disgust, feels euphoric when the number drops and worthless when it doesn't, is passing out at work. If a patient sat across from me and described those 3 months, their 3 months, I would not be saying, wow, this is impressive discipline. I would be recognizing a pattern, and I would be rightfully concerned, and I'd want them to have real support. And that's not me being dramatic about my own story. It's telling you what those behaviors look like when you take the success off of it, because the success is really the only thing that separated my story from a much worse one, and the success is not guaranteed. I got the outcome despite the method. Plenty of people run the exact same method and get the actual result, which is injury, rebound, a relationship with food and their own body that takes years to repair. If any part of this sounds familiar to you, whether it's your own story or that of a loved one, I do think it's worth talking about. And I don't mean the YouTube comment section, and certainly not to some guy on the internet with a transformation photo or a transformation story. I think you would need to talk to a doctor, a counselor, but somebody real and someone with the expertise to be able to help you through that. So I'm sure the question that you're going to ask is, what exactly is worth keeping? Because something has to be, right? And to answer that question, I think what is worth keeping is really just the boring stuff. The whole foods, eating meals that you actually enjoy. For me, I'm a creature of habit, so I've had some version of the same ground beef or bison or sometimes lamb bowl daily for the last 2 years, and I am a happy camper. I think that eating like somebody who plans on keeping their body is a very key concept to how I think people should approach their diets. Training that I can repeat with rest included, instead of treating it like some kind of a punishment tool, has been extremely beneficial for me. I think the aggressive deficit, the daily sprinting, the punishment economy, the no days off philosophy, all of those things were removed, and still my results stayed and continued to progress. So I think that says a lot about what is necessarily healthy work and what isn't. I think that the honest epilogue is that for me, I made so many changes in my life around that time that it is a little bit difficult to pinpoint particular things as the drivers of change for my story. And I do think that a lot of the time when people are able to reverse engineer these very clean causal stories about their transformations, it's often because they're trying to sell you things. And I will make a video about this probably in future where I get into that idea a little bit more, because I do think it's one of the more important ideas to cover on this channel, but that'll be a different video for a different day. So yeah, that's the origin story. A guy who got called a monster in his own kitchen, got humiliated by a kayak photo, and then fixed a real problem with a method that I would talk a patient out of. This channel exists so that you guys can get the outcomes without having to deal with the toxic methods. Now, I'm a nurse. I read research for a living, and I've also been that guy who ignores the research because the goal that I have is far more important to me. I know what that feels like. So that's why in all of my videos, I'm going to be diving into what the evidence says, what's plausible but unproven, and then what my own personal preferences are. And I'm going to label those very clearly every single time, including when the evidence refutes something that I say. I think that's basically it. That's living in alignment. It's not a supplement stack. It's not tallow. It's not any of those singular things. I think living in alignment is the practice of being honest about what you know, what you don't, and what you're doing anyway. I'll see you in the next one.